Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for joining. This is the last week of March. It's the last week of Women's History Month, and I'm really, really excited to have this last roundtable and go out with a bang. So for those of you who don't know, I'm from New York. My first office is in New York. I absolutely love New York. So I wanted to focus on amazing women who are either from New York, have lived in New York, have worked in New York, and talk about their experiences as women and females here in the city. New York is known for being, a very complicated city, but also very, very exciting at the same time. So lots of amazing women have come from the city, and I just want us to acknowledge that by having this roundtable to explore all of our different experiences here in the city and get to know the women of New York better. This is not like Sex and the City. This will be an elevated version of Sex and the City, more inclusive, more in-depth, and more real. So without further ado, I want to introduce you to all of our guests, Clementine, Eden, Glenda, and Marian, and each of them will introduce themselves and what they do. Clementine, why don't you go first?
Okay, thank you so much for having me. My name is Clémentine Dessau. I'm originally from France. I've been here 10 years. I am the CEO of the All Women Project, which is a charity that empowers women and girls. I'm also the CEO of Bonjour Creative, which is a creative studio based here in Miami, but used to be based in New York. When I do production and art direction, and I'm also a plus-size model for the last 10 years or so.
Where can we have seen you? Which magazines or which designers?
I do pretty much all like mainstream H&M, Levi's, Macy's, like all those big retailers. So you probably have seen me in some forms.
Amazing. Thank you so much for that. Eden, why don't you tell us about what you do and where you're from and where you live in New York now?
Ciao a tutti, I am Eden Gebreselassie, born and raised in Milan, Italy, to parents from Eritrea in the Horn of Africa. I moved to America to pursue kind of the American dream and go to college. And I did international relations with a minor in French, thinking that I was going to be like Martin Luther King or something like that. But I actually ended up in the sports and entertainment world. I have over 14 years of experience in sports and entertainment. And now I also have a strong passion in sustainability, and I am one of the founding members and COO of Project Sahai, a solar energy nonprofit. And I just have, I live in Harlem. Harlem has been a dream of mine since I was 12. Once I read the Malcolm X book and I learned about Harlem Renaissance. I've always been a lover of literature and history and Black history. And I think Harlem encompasses all of them. So I'm a proud, citizen of America, but also I'm very proud to live in Harlem.
Yeah, I actually grew up in Harlem, and I grew up around the corner from the National Black Theater, and also a block away from Langston Hughes's house. So my parents still have their house there, and I think I've seen a lot of changes happen, not as many changes as I would like to see compared to other neighborhoods that have been rapidly changing in New York. But on the block where my parents have their home, that's actually, if you guys are familiar with jazz, it's that picture, that famous jazz picture in Harlem in front of the brownstones. I don't know if you guys know about that picture. Anyway,
maybe I see it.
I'm sure everyone has seen it, but that picture was taken in front of my parents' house, which was
nice.
A really cool fun fact about Harlem and my parents' house. Marian, tell us where you're from, what you do, and where you live in New York.
Sure. So shout out to Italy. I'm fourth generation Italian. Been to Milan, great time there. My grandfather was the first here from Italy and was an architect and built a lot of the churches in the tri-state area and contributed to building the New York MetLife building back in the 1900s. So my family's been here a really long time. I'm from the Bronx originally. I spent most of my first 30 years of life in the Bronx. And now I currently live in Brooklyn, in Windsor Terrace in Brooklyn. I'm a lawyer. I've been a lawyer for 20 years, mostly in litigation. So I'm that lawyer that goes to the courtroom, the one that you would see on television in front of a jury. I've handled lots of multi-million-dollar litigation. At this point in my career, I own my own law firm, so it's Conde Law Group PL. Best feeling in the world to be the owner of your business, whether it's a law firm or not-for-profit like Clementine has. I mean, to be in control of your life is the best thing in the world. Time to do the things that you really want to do. And one of the things that I do is I'm the board chair of Housing Works. If you're from New York, you might know Housing Works. Housing Works bookstore, thrift store. We have many shops in the city, and we have healthcare centers. So I'm the chair of the Housing Works Healthcare Center, where we provide healthcare to those who are in underprivileged areas, and we also provide housing to the homeless in New York. And we've been around for about 30 years now. I'm a mom also, and I'll tell you more later. Nice meeting you.
That's awesome. I didn't know you were the chair of Housing Works. When I was growing up, we would always go to their thrift stores. They have one on the other side. It was near my school, and buy stuff there.
Yes.
So that is a really cool fun fact about you. I didn't know that.
Yes, the Community Health Board. So we have a few different divisions, and I'm the chair of the Community Health Board, which are the health centers. So we have hospitals and clinics in Brooklyn and New York City.
That's amazing. Glenda, tell us where you're from, what you do, and where you live in New York.
Hi, my name is Glenda. I was originally born in El Salvador, but I grew up in New York City. I've lived there basically my whole life. I am a cardiac ICU nurse at one of the hospitals in New York City. You know, I don't share anything, but you know, it's, I love living in the city. I love being a nurse. I love what I do. You know, there's been a lot of changes, you know, obviously since I was little that I've seen within the city, you know, so.
How was it working during the height of the pandemic?
Very stressful, to say the least. You know, it was kind of scary times. We didn't really know what we were dealing with. You know, the hospital tried to protect us as best as possible, providing us the PPE that was available at the time. You know, it was very, it was just very kind of like in the disbelief of like, oh my God, I can't believe this is happening. But also kind of having to suspend that disbelief because you were needed to help, you know, people who were in distress, you know, who were literally dying. You know, of a disease that we didn't know exactly how it was acting. You know, we didn't really have, you know, we didn't have any cures for it. We didn't have any treatments for it at the time. You know, it was very challenging, and it was very, you know, again, stressful only because, you know, we were trying to protect ourselves, we were trying to protect the public, we were trying to protect our patients as well. But it was, we got through it. So it was a very cohesive kind of thing because we always work together as a group between the doctors, the intensivists, you know, the nurses, the patient care associates, the nurse assistants. But we just kind of had to elevate that level of cohesion during that pandemic.
Yeah, I mean, thank you. New York City has changed so much since the COVID pandemic, and thank you so much for everything that you're doing in the hospitals as first responders and as a nurse. It's humbling to see people in your position really work hard to slowly construct the fabric of the city again, because it was kind of lost last year. And you're doing extremely important work, and I myself am very grateful because I've been affected by COVID. We've had people in our life who've passed away, New Yorkers who've passed away, and it's just devastating for families, for businesses, and for the city in general.
Yes, it was. It's very. I mean, it was just amazing to see the city being so quiet during the times when we had to shut down, and you know, I think that was one of like the most striking kind of things. You know, just as an aside from just, you know, everybody being sick and all that stuff, that was like one of the outside kind of hospital striking things, that just seeing the city so quiet.
Yeah, one of the things that I remember so vividly is I closed my office down for 5 months, but I still had to file cases, and my kids were not in school. So we would have to all drive to the city together, and, you know, my husband would stay in the car with the kids, and I'd have to go upstairs and put the cases together. But pre-pandemic, there's no way you can get into Midtown, and like, you can't even double park in Midtown. before the pandemic. And every single time I went in to file cases, we would get a perfect spot right in front of our office. And this is, you know, for me, incredulous, because it was not something that we could do before. My whole building was empty. There are 5 businesses that closed down in my building. I'm very, very thankful that we were able to continue working and provide excellent legal services to our clients here in the States and beyond. But it was, you know, New York is kind of like that tempered child who's like out of control, and like you never know what's going to happen. But like to see the city so one-dimensional and calm and just a shadow of who it was before was very, very striking for me, because I've had amazing, crazy experiences in the city that have marked me as an individual, and to see the city so one-dimensional was, you know, heartbreaking for me.
Yeah.
It still is. It still is heartbreaking, because it hasn't come back. It's completely different now.
It is. It's, you know, a lot of people at the time, you know, and they were scared, and I understand. You know, we were one of the first states that was hit like really bad. We had one of the first cases, you know, in the eastern, you know, in the eastern side. So a lot of people, they fled New York City, you know, and I remember seeing reports of like, oh, if you fled New York City, you know, can't come back, and, you know, typical New York attitude. But you know, but it's, you know, it just is what it is. That's just New York, you know. But you know, everybody else, like, they've tried to help each other as best they can. You know, they try to advocate for. I know small businesses and restaurants especially have tried to advocate for themselves to try to open back in a safe manner. You know, and we can only work within the bounds of the information that we have. You know, regarding the virus, how it spreads, you know, things like that. So that can make it challenging. And especially with people who maybe they don't understand, or but it's affecting like their businesses, you know, their livelihood. And I understand that, but it's kind of a thing where you have to weigh lives and exposure, and, you know, the risk that it poses to the public versus, you know, opening a business and things like that. You know, I know people were very happy when they were distributing the PPP, the payments for the small businesses and things like that. But, you know, what overshadowed it was the alleged fraud that's been going on, where you hear like these big businesses got a big chunk of that money, and then like the other businesses, the smaller businesses, they didn't get as much as they could have to try to supplement them through the shutdown, you know. So it's that I feel like contributed a lot to just trying, you know, the challenges of trying to open up the city back again. So,
but on a side note, like, I guess the silver lining of COVID is that there's been like a burst of small businesses, of women who started to create their own businesses and sell online, because nobody was, you know, working in the traditional sense, like going to the office. And that is something that is extremely powerful, because seeing women in a position of power and leadership and having control and ownership of their finances and being emancipated, and understanding that, you know, you don't need to necessarily work for somebody to obtain your goals. I think it's very, very important, because I don't think that, at least in my experience, women are groomed or trained for entrepreneurship, which is something that I'm very, very passionate about. So let's move on to something a little bit lighter. I want you guys to talk to me about your favorite neighborhoods. Are you guys downtown people, uptown people, Brooklyn people? Is anybody gonna rep Staten Island? Glenda, why don't you go first? Tell me, what's your favorite neighborhood and why?
There's so many. I mean, there's different neighborhoods that I like for different reasons. I've never been to Staten Island, so I'm sorry, Staten Island, I can't rep for you. You know, but you know, like, there's different areas that I like for different reasons. Like, I'll like the Upper East Side just because, you know, obviously Central Park is there, you know, like Riverside Drive, Midtown, just that hustle and bustle. You know, the Lower East Side I like just because of, you know, it's a different type of vibe down there. You know, I'm originally from Queens. I'm a Queens girl. And so it's Queens is a little bit more suburban. You know, it's like the suburbs of the city, So there, you know, I'll go to, you know, Forest Hills for eats, you know, to go shopping. You know, it's just different areas. You know, just I don't have a specific favorite neighborhood, but each neighborhood that I do like, I'd like them for specific reasons.
Got it. Eden, what's your favorite neighborhood?
Well, I kind of mentioned it before. I'm a Harlem girl, through and through, but I kind of agree with Glenda. I enjoy having to do errands in different parts of the city so that I have a continuous like attachment and reason to discover the city continuously. So for me, I love everything like Union Square, Upper West Side, West Village, Upper East, like for different reasons. So yeah, I love the city in general, but I'm Harlem.
Clementine, what's your favorite neighborhood?
Well, when I first moved to New York about 8 years ago, I used to have a tiny, tiny room in Sunset Park, and that was my first New York experience, and I was petrified at first because I didn't know. And then I loved it because it was full of family, full of food, like so cool. I really liked living there for 2 years. And then I moved to Long Island City, Queens, which I love. Like, I mean, I was living the dream, like in a highlight with the view on the water. Like, I just felt like a New York princess, like Sex in the City style. So that was a great, like, 4 years of my life. And I mean, I loved it. So it developed really fast, like new restaurant, new people coming in, a bunch of dogs everywhere. I used to love it. I used to run right on the waterfront. That was my hood. I was there most of the day. And then when I was going out and seeing my friends, I'm very much of a downtown girl. I would love the West Village to walk in during the day and just watch the trees and the buildings. That's just that was very much my favorite neighborhood. Probably also because of Sex in the City, really, to be to tell you the truth. So yeah, that was but yeah, like everybody, I just feel like New York has a neighborhood for everything, and that's what's so nice about it. Like, you never get bored, you always have stuff to do, and you always can just take the train to anywhere, really.
I'm so surprised about these responses because I've got a very, very specific area of the city that I like for very specific reasons. But Marion, I'm curious. You're from the Bronx and now you live in Brooklyn.
Yeah, right.
What's your favorite?
So my heart is always with Bronxites. They're just the kindest, most loving, people, that I've met, in New York. I loved Manhattan when it was gritty. I loved it when there were prostitutes on the street and there were people, just everyone everywhere. I think Manhattan's too polished now, and it just seems to me that's just one corporate business after the other. And we're missing the flavor of the artists, of the people that were just the beginning of New York. And it just feels different to me now. So I actually skipped over Manhattan. I went from Bronx, Brooklyn, and I love Brooklyn. I love it here so much. I love the culture. I live in Windsor Terrace, which is right near Prospect Park, and that's the same park that was designed by the designers of Central Park. So it has a lake, it has beautiful hiking trails, we have tennis courts, but we also have the ability to go from neighborhood to neighborhood here, and I go by like what makes me hungry, right? I mean, that's the Italian part of me. So if I want Mexican, I head to Sunset Park or, Chinatown, or, there's Jamaican food on Flatbush. So whatever you want, it's here, and I love it.
Yeah, I actually lived in Brooklyn all throughout college. So I lived in, which was over 10 years ago. So I lived in Williamsburg when it was not cool. I lived in Greenpoint when it was not cool. And we also lived in, I also lived in Bushwick. And I remember my college boyfriend, I was coming home from school because I went to school on the Upper East, I went to college on the Upper East Side. And he's like, oh, be careful. Someone got shot at the Halsey Street station. So yeah. I also lived in a Hasidic neighborhood. So I've been all over Brooklyn, and my parents lived in Brooklyn Heights when I was a little girl, which is beautiful. And I grew up in Harlem. I went to school on the Upper East Side, but my favorite area, and I will say this until I died, for me, there was nothing cool north of Union Square. So I have very, very amazing experiences like Union Square and South, so specifically East Village and LES and Alphabet City. So in Alphabet City, there's this amazing theater company called Theater for the New City. They are one of the top theater companies in the Northeast for street theater. And it's run by the creative director, Crystal Fields, who has her annual Halloween party in the theater, which is really amazing because the theater is 3 different floors. And you've got different acts going on. You've got like cabaret, you've got micro theater. And when I was in high school, I did theater growing up. So I would always go to Crystal's Halloween party. And East Village, LES, I got my second ear pierced in the East Village, St. Mark's Place, when it was just really cool. We were one of the last people to get into Limelight, which was a historic club.
Best ever.
Yeah, and I just have so many experiences that have formed me and marked me as a person. I did dumpster diving. I did just so many things south of 14th Street. I really did not go home unless I had to, right? And on the weekends, I was never at my parents' house. And I actually moved out at 17. So for me, nothing to this day is cool up north. I'm not a Harlem person. I'm not into uptown at all. But the artistic, gritty energy of, Lower East Side, Alphabet City, and East Village is something that still attracts me to this day. And even though I live in Jersey, I know that eventually we're going to go back to New York. And this segues into like my next question. So one of the reasons why I also really like LES and the East Village is because of the friends that I had and the experiences that I had. And all of this was kind of memorialized in a film called Kids by Larry Clark. So I actually had a couple of friends who were in Larry Clark's film. And if you guys haven't seen it, he's an amazing kind of suspect documentary photographer and filmmaker, and he kind of just explores like the angst and the teenage years of marginalized young people. So when I think of New York and I think of my experiences in New York, I really think of that film Kids, because it kind of just explores a couple of days in the life of these teenagers of just asking for money on the street and party hopping and, taking drugs and just having their young person experience. And when I think of New York, I think of Kids by Larry Clark. So what film or artwork or book makes you think of New York? Eden, you want to start?
Ooh, I think it's Malcolm X, the autobiography of Malcolm X. But not just like that book, anything that has to do with Harlem Renaissance. So the songs that come from that era, thinking about the Apollo, all of these things that have to do with that era and the culture are a great reminder of New York to me. So I would say that mostly.
Clémentine?
Well, for me, growing up, when I was in my early teens, it was definitely Sex and the City. And then we have a few movies. I think it's called New York, Je t'aime. I don't remember. French movie. They have 3 of them. And it's a French girl that is living on her own in New York, and then she finds this New York guy, and they move together in a loft, and they have like biracial kids. They're gorgeous. And that was like, right? It was awesome. Chris Rock. Yes. And
yeah, I've seen it. Hey, what's her name? Zizi Delpy directed it. She's
so good. And that was like such a French, like a French girl, cool girl dream. And so, I saw this movie when I first moved to New York. So I was like, this is what's coming for me. It's gonna be so cool. I'm gonna live in a loft. I'm gonna be such an artist. But I mean, nothing really happened, any of that. But definitely what inspired me and like the lifestyle of the French girl in New York. I love that.
Marion?
Saturday Night Live, John Travolta and the Brooklyn accents that everyone had, the energy, that the time capsule that we were living in, the music of that day, very New York.
I agree. I love John Travolta.
Mm-hmm.
I love that film. Glenda?
Usually when I see graffiti, because I feel like, such great artwork, honestly, like graffiti artwork all around the city, sanctioned or not, and it's always interesting to me to see such talent honestly, because there's like some graffiti that you think it's like, they've taken up the whole mural space, or even if it's just a small part of the mural space, it's such an expression of the artist. So usually when I see graffiti, I think of New York City, and I'm pretty good at distinguishing when, in movies when they have a shot of a city, I'm pretty good at distinguishing. I'm like, okay, that's New York City, and then next thing you know, it's like a yellow cab passes by, or you see something about New York City. I don't know, maybe it's just I recognize it within the film or the TV show or something like that. But it's like if it's in another city and it's supposed to look like New York, I'm like,
Yeah, same.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I'm
actually, did you see that the series from where is it from? Is it from the New York Times? Love Stories, like on Amazon. Love Story, is that what it's called?
I haven't seen it. No.
Oh, it's
probably
all
something I should check out.
Oh my God, I'm obsessing over it because all of it happens in New York, and it's taken from, I think, the New York Times Love column. And every single story is different. I think there's 7 episodes, and I watched it like 2 or 3 times. And every time I watch it, and I'm in Miami, and I'm like, oh, I miss New York. It's so romantic. It's so beautiful. Oh my God, it's a must watch. It's amazing.
Yeah.
I'm actually really bad about that. I will just assume, like, if it's a film of like that takes place in a major city, that it's New York. To me, there's nothing better than living in New York. I've lived in Paris, Rome, Modena, Napoli, Peking. I've lived in so many different cities, Austin and Texas. And to me, if you're going to talk about a big city, I'll just assume it's New York. Even if it's like Chicago or something, I'll just assume it's New York.
Yeah. I don't know. I think it just comes from the love that we have for the city.
But do you guys like New York? I feel like New Yorkers have like a love-hate relationship with New York. Like, I don't know. Marian, do you like New York?
I feel the city's a part of me. I feel as if, it's a person. And so, watching it go through, COVID, and not to go back to the sad part of this, is I can really feel the sadness. I feel like the city lives and breathes, and it's part of all of us, especially if you've been here your whole life. Yeah, I love it here. I love it. There are things that we need improvements on. But I don't think that there's any place in the world that we could live that we have this rainbow of cultures, all these beautifully diverse people that we can learn about and enjoy as we live here. So for me, it's number one. I've traveled quite a bit, like you have. I haven't really lived any place else. I admire other cities, but this one I think is for me the best.
Yeah.
Eden, I saw you do the heart symbol.
Yeah, yeah, you see that?
Yeah, same. I mean, before
That's
COVID,
my art.
I traveled a lot. Oh, that's beautiful, Marianne.
Thank you.
Before COVID, I traveled a lot for work and then for personal reasons. And there's actually something physical that happened to me every time I landed here. Like, no matter where I landed in my whole life, like, I'm from Milan in Italy or Eritrea. And something about New York is like physical. There is an energy here that I love. There are moments where you have a bad day and you don't need money. You don't need like a friend. You can just walk out and make the city kind of remind you, why like everything is amazing, and there is some magic to it. I mean, my favorite thing is talking to tourists or people that are new to the city and kind of rediscover through their eyes and stories. And New York is a very generous city, just keeps on giving. So I personally love it.
I just want to take a quick pause and shout out to everybody who's been saying hi to us on Habs. Hi, Pablo. Hi, Donald. Hi, Memo. Thanks so much for watching us live. Clementine, did you tell us if you love New York or not?
Yeah, I left New York actually in February 2020. And it wasn't not planned. I kind of just had to leave, and I ended up in Miami, which I love. It's my favorite city in the whole world. But I do miss New York on a regular basis, especially that first 8 months where I couldn't really come back to New York at all because of the pandemic, and all of my work used to be in New York, so I was kind of stuck in Miami, which is the worst place to be. But yeah, I kept missing New York and the hustle and the work and running like in between cabs and the subway and yeah, it's been like a really tough like few months where I couldn't come back. And thankfully now I've been coming back and forth between New York and Miami a lot those past few months, which is awesome. Finally, safe to do so. And yeah, I'm so grateful to have kind of the best of both worlds, because I get to just settle and chill and tan over here, and then I fly to New York and the hustle starts and I see all my friends and I eat in my favorite restaurants, and then I come back here and chill again. So it's pretty good mix for me, actually.
That's what my parents say. They live in Miami. Glenda, do you love or hate New York, or both?
I feel like you. I feel like I have a love-hate relationship with New York. And it's kind of like there comes a point when I'm like, oh my God, I need to get out of New York. It's like, it's a lot of hustle and bustle, a lot of like, you're like, I need a break. And you kind of go somewhere and then you're there for like a week, 2 weeks. After 2 weeks, you're like, I need to go home. I need to go back to New York. I need to be dodging the cabs. It's just something that you miss. It's just something, I don't know. It's like, it gets to a point where you kind of bubble over, but then once you go away and you simmer down, you're like, no, like this is too slow for me.
Yeah.
I've just traveled for pleasure. I haven't traveled for business or anything like that. But there's, the other places that I've gone to, everybody's walking leisurely and things like that. And I'm just like dodging past them.
Yeah.
And people like, slow down.
Yeah, the slowness. Everywhere feels so slow compared to New York.
Mm-hmm.
I remember when I first moved here, I was like, what the hell is wrong with those people? Like, come on, like, let's go. And I mean, I guess I'm slow now too. But at first I was like, oh my God, I fucking hate it.
I always tell my parents that they basically ruined my life by having me be raised in New York, because the bar is set so high now that like anywhere I go, I'm kind of comparing it to New York. It's the same with love. Like when you fall in love, and you know what true love is, you're kind of like, oh fuck, like, the bar is set so high. I don't know if I'm ever going to feel these things again or see these things again or have these smells again. So I have a love-hate relationship with New York because it's just so, I just can't get it out of my system. Like I want to divorce myself from the city, but I just can't. It's like my drug. Like we bought a house in New Jersey and I'm like, I think we need to move back to New York, even if it's, we're renting or whatever. But what I really love about New York is that it's that abrasive best friend that kind of gives you that kick in the ass when you need it. So every time you feel like you're slowing down or you're getting comfortable in life, New York is right there to tell you, what are you doing, Elektra? Get up, you've got to do something, you've got to move, you've got to do A, B, and C. And there's no city that I have found that has been so active in my discovery of who I am and what I want to do. I don't know if that makes sense. Like, I feel like other cities are like, you live the city, but like in New York, the city lives you. Like you are dictated by the rhythm of the city. And I love that feeling. It's almost like you and the city are like partners in crime in whatever you want to do or don't want to do. That's what I love about the city. What I hate about the city is if you are not strong mentally, I think it's really easy to get distracted and to get off your road. So it takes a really strong person to be on your track, right? To just do what you need to do, not get distracted, and achieve your goals. And that's why sometimes a lot of people, don't achieve their goals, because they do fall into the distractions of the city. When I think that if you utilize all of the tools that the city gives to you, you can become a very fruitful individual and very successful in terms of whatever you want to do or however you define success. I firmly believe that there is no limitation in what you can accomplish here in the city. And, not to speak about my parents again, but my parents, were undocumented for 21 years. They now own 3 houses. I went to private school, like one of the top private schools in New York, and college, and I became a lawyer. I mean, there's just a lot that you can do if you're open to that hustle and that hard work. And I always think people who are from New York or who have lived in New York for long periods of time have that extra oomph in them that makes that, there's a little like, I don't know, like kick in their walk. They just walk differently. They see things differently. So love it and hate it, but there's, I'm trying to divorce myself from it. It's just not working out. I have to go back to it. If you could change anything about the city, what would you guys change? Glenda?
To be honest, currently, I feel like it's being overdeveloped, to be honest.
What do you mean by that?
So there's been a lot of like developments. Like I understand, like, like when Long Island City, they developed it, it used to be like warehouses and things like that. They developed it into high rises and things like that, which is great. You have more housing and things like that, because in the city, with as many people as we do need housing. But there's certain areas where I feel like it's lost a bit of its charm, because they've developed, again, high rises or buildings or things like that. And a lot of these places, they, in building those, they don't build areas or they don't build things that are a little bit more interesting, up, like a plaza or like a park or things like that, that would attract more people to go to that area. They're just kind of building over it. And a lot of times it's also cost prohibitive for a lot of people. Some people are being pushed out of the certain neighborhoods, and then they go and they build, and it's kind of like, okay, yeah, the buildings are here, but I wish that they would do that, and I wish that they would promote the parks a little bit more. There's a lot of things to do in a lot of our parks. In Forest Park, they have a golf course. A lot of people, even if you're a New Yorker, they probably didn't know that there was a golf course at Forest Park in Queens. No. So I wish that they would promote that in the city a little bit more.
I agree, especially because we have a large population of young people. Parks that's where everyone is over the summer.
Mm-hmm.
Eden, what would you change about New York?
So it's two things. I think it's similar to what Glenda said. I think it's zoning for schools. Like, I'm a big believer in equity for all. And so knowing that you are in a specific neighborhood and therefore you're not going to have access to good schools just because of your neighborhood, I think that's terrible. But I think that has to do also with America in general, not just like New York. And then, making sure that New York doesn't lose its charm chasing money and capitalism. Like, I think we have done a great job at both, right? Like, kind of as Marian was mentioning earlier about how downtown was before, or Times Square back in the day. So I hope we still keep that fair balance, healthy balance in between the, American dream, but also let's be creative and let's keep it in New York.
But how can you be a real creative when rent is like $5,000 a month? Like, sometimes I ask, like, how can you be like, have you guys seen Rent? Obviously, most people have seen Rent. Like, how can you do Rent in 2021?
It's very difficult.
How can you be a romantic, starving artist? I don't know how they do it. Like, I have lots of clients who are artists, obviously, but how do you do that? How do you be an artist and pay your rent?
Well, that's what I didn't like living in New York. I just felt like I was working in order to pay my bills. And that's one of the big changes that happened when I moved here. Instantly, like, I didn't have to work nearly as much to pay my bills, and that's life changing, because then you have more time to actually pursue your dreams and goals and plans for life, other than just make the rent. So that's, for me, it's been a huge problem since I first moved there, and probably way before I even got there, but it's getting worse and worse. And I have a lot of friends that are creative and artists that are just moving away because of that solely.
Marian, what would you change about the city?
Well, I think we have dual crises here, and one of them is mental health, and that overlaps with homelessness. And I think in a city where we are so wealthy and there are so many real estate investors building and developing here, we should be making sure that we have enough housing at this point for everyone that's on the street. There's no reason that we can't provide a home for everyone. There shouldn't be homelessness at all. There shouldn't be people starving in the world, or, in a city like New York, right? And then when it comes to artists and let's say more middle income people, we should talk about ways that we can adjust rents to meet their salaries so that we can keep our artists here. I mean, they're the breath and the heart of our city. People come from all over the world to watch our shows, to hear our concerts, to go to our galleries, right? And we got to keep them here. We need them here. So until investors start seeing the value of the artists, we're not going to be in the place that we need to be here in New York.
I agree. I think that, though, in spite of the high rents, you're still going to attract the top talent to come to New York because this is just the international hub for finance, the arts, business. People will still come. And you know what happens and what will continue to happen is that people will make sacrifices and will start to let go what is normal. Like, it is very common in New York to see like a 40-year-old person or a 50-year-old person, in a single room occupancy or in, living with roommates. And that's like the dangerous part of New York. That's what I mean about the distractions. Like, people will sacrifice, basic living, like normal living conditions to live in New York. So I don't think that I don't think that they're going to create housing that is for people who make low income. I think that what needs to happen, and what's a more accurate, probable change, is to make sure that employers pay people appropriately. But the problem with that is there's just so much competition in New York that you will always find somebody who will be willing to do the job cheaper. It's just the nature of like economics and numbers. I just don't see the city going towards preserving that part of the city. I just see the city as becoming more and more and more exclusive because people want to be here. I mean, even during the pandemic, January 2021 was the record number of lease signings in 13 years. That is wild. That means people are actually coming back to the city. I mean, obviously they're probably negotiating their rents and things like that, but I'll just tell you, like, commercially, for like a commercial space in New York, because my lease is up this year, you can find maybe rents that were like $5,000, pre-pandemic. You're finding them now at like $3,000 a month. So people are coming back to the city and people will continue to rebuild the city, but I do not see New York fostering or preserving any sort of, low income or creating that sort of housing for people. It's just not the way the city works. The city is money, money, money. So, I mean, I don't know. I hope that I'm wrong. But I just don't think that the city is moving in that direction. And the way you see it is with people coming back and the rents and people just focusing on work, right? That's why people come here, for work. But like I said, I hope that I'm wrong. But in any event, what is your favorite New York moment? Marian, do you want to tell us?
Sure. And so, I have the painting behind me. I don't usually have it on this wall, but I put it there because you wanted to talk about New York. And so the painting was, I did during one of those, sip and paint classes, in the city, so in Williamsburg, and it was around Valentine's Day this year. The building itself means the world to me. I started out in the Bronx. I've worked hard as hell. Don't necessarily come from wealth. I had to really, make my way up in the world. And I always felt like I was chasing the ability to buy a home, even into my 40s. Wondering if I would ever be able to afford a home in my city, a house in my city. I was always 10 steps ahead. And so I had a big medical malpractice case and, some settlement money coming in. And I put in an offer for my first house here in Brooklyn, the one I'm in right now. And I was standing on top of the Empire State Building when the call came through that my offer was accepted. So it was this moment where I was, looking over the entire city. I could see Brooklyn out there, and being told that, wow, this moment had finally come, and it couldn't have been better. But standing on top of the Empire State Building.
That's amazing. I think that feeling is felt and echoed by so many people who are from the city who, you grew up here, you live here, but sometimes it's just so hard to buy property. Like my husband worked on the Hudson Yards. He did the vessel, And just for fun, I went to go look and see like how much condo costs there. And for a two bedroom, two bath, you're looking at $15 million. That is wild. So if you have two kids like we do, like what are you gonna do for 15 million bucks? You're gonna have them share a room. Eden, what's your favorite New York moment?
Well, I have a million, but I'm gonna just mention this just for fun. So to kind of bring it all together, as I mentioned, I studied international relations with a minor in French with the dream of working in the United Nations and like, I don't know, be Mother Teresa in the United Nations. And so I moved to New York after graduating. I studied in Virginia. And I was still a waitress to just round up money, as we all are saying that everybody needs money. So I was on a bus going to my job, and I remember like loving MTV back then, like in the early 2000s. And they used to have like these skits of like opinion, like people that go and give their opinions. So in the bus, like someone walks in, I'm like, why do I recognize this person? And he was Joe Levy, the then chief editor of Rolling Stone magazine. So I kind of sat with him and I started talking to him and telling him like I was looking for work, blah, blah. And 2 weeks later, I was working at Rolling Stone magazine.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So, and because of that, I kind of, my trajectory changed from wanting to work at the United Nations to entering kind of the entertainment and sports world. Because in a way, I never thought I could make impact. Being a child of immigrant, you always think like just be a doctor, be a lawyer, or, work at the United Nations. So I Rolling Stone magazine, I was like, oh, wait, there is an impact. Like I can actually have fun and make an impact in this world. So that's my one of the highlights of my life.
That is a true New York moment. That is, serendipity, hustling, luck, all in that. Do you remember where you saw him? Were you on the subway, on the bus? Which bus?
I was on the bus on Fifth Avenue. I can't remember. That's M5. I think that's the M5, the bus.
Yeah, that's crazy. That is a sign to everyone who's watching that opportunity is everywhere. Mm-hmm. You just have to take a risk and talk to somebody that looks familiar to you. Mm-hmm. When I was a little girl, I saw Drew Barrymore on the street, and I went up to her, and I'm like, "Can you help me with my acting career? I do theater." And she said no.
Oh, well, at least you tried.
At least I tried. Ouch. Clementine, what's your favorite New York moment?
So many, but I would say like every sunset from the east side, like looking at the city, it's just like so amazing. And like the New York nights, like I remember so many nights like decided not to take the subway and just walk the streets because there was not that much people, and the smell is different at night and the sounds are different, and running into those like musicians in the subways that just make your night, even though you didn't have a great night, like they kind of turn it around, and all those little things that are only just like so special to New York and you can't find anywhere else. Like those are super New York moments for me.
Glenda?
I remember one time I'd just gotten off work and I'd had a relatively difficult night and I fell asleep on the subway, which I know I shouldn't do as a female in New York, but I fell asleep and I got off at the wrong stop. And I was like, you know what? It was a Sunday morning, and if you're from New York City, you guys know that on weekends, sometimes it's like the worst because this train's not going this way, that train's not going that way. So you kind of have to make alternate plans and kind of know your routes. So I had to walk to a different train station, and I was like, you know what? I'm just going to do it. Whatever. I need to go home. And I was just walking, and I was walking by 42nd Street, and it was so quiet. It was like there wasn't really a lot of people. And I like literally, that was probably the slowest I've ever walked in Times Square. The slowest I've ever walked. And I just took my time and I just kind of looked up. And then in the side streets, I was just like looking up and just noticing things that you normally wouldn't notice from just walking, because all you're doing is just kind of either looking ahead or looking down when you're walking. You're just trying to get past people. You're just trying to make sure you're not stepping on a puddle or any other assorted things in the street. And it's just like you rarely kind of look up And that's one of my favorite things to do actually in the city sometimes when I'm walking. During the nights, I love to look up and kind of look at the lights and things like that. But during the day, I kind of like to look at the details that the architectures have, especially in the old buildings, because like most of them are made of brick and stone and things like that. And they'll have like the most intricate, like little details on them. And that's one of my favorite things to kind of notice when I'm just, when I have the time to be able to walk through the city. Yeah.
I'm going to have to echo Clementina and Glenda. I don't know if these are necessarily my favorite New York moments, but two of them. One was I was 12 years old when the Twin Towers fell. And I remember being at school and, my classmates, we were 12 and they were saying, oh, we're gonna die. Will you give me, the last kiss or whatever? And parents, they couldn't reach. Yeah, it was just. We were 12, and they couldn't reach our parents. And I just remember being in this massive gym room with all of my classmates, and just not really understanding what was going on, but in a weird way, feeling comfort that I was with everybody at that time, even though I wasn't with my parents, I was just with these kids that I went to school with. I just remember feeling not alone. And those are feelings that living in New York, even if you are alone, you feel so alone. And the second time I felt this feeling again was there was a blackout, a huge blackout when I was 14, 15. And I was working in a professional theater company at Columbia University. And again, I probably didn't have a cell phone or anything like that. And I just remember these masses of people walking on Broadway. And I remember thinking, holy shit, I have time. I have time to just walk home. Because I couldn't contact my parents or my siblings. There was no point in staying in the theater. And it was just me and like thousands of people just walking uptown on Broadway trying to get home. And it was a true blackout. Like there were no lights or anything. And I just remember feeling safe, feeling okay, feeling like I was a part of something. And I think that's probably why I became an attorney. And I like to tell the stories of my clients. I like to feel part of something bigger than me. And I think New York makes us feel those things, especially at least when I was 12, I felt that. And during the blackout, I just felt part of something larger than me, as if even though we were just walking on Broadway, it was really silly. We're just walking on Broadway. I just felt like we all had this collective goal of just trying to get home safely. So those are moments that, really mark me and really just remind me of the beauty and the complexity of the city.
Yeah, I think that's a big part of the city, to be honest. 9/11, the blackout, Sandy, now with the pandemic, it's like, it just has this ability to just, as much as, other places think that we're, abrasive and this and that, we just have that kind of like instinctual thing to help each other out in moments of crisis, because we just instinctively know that we're all in this together, and the only way to make it out, to be able to survive, whatever it is, whatever disaster, whatever emergency there is to do it together, because we can only help each other out, and that's the way that that's the way we're just going to come out on the other side of it. And I think it's again, my earliest, disaster is probably 9/11. I was in high school at that time. And it's just like, I remember everybody just helping each other. And it's like, I was in the city during the blackout too. And I remember the masses of people just crossing, into Queens. And it's just, that's one of the things I love about the city, that no matter, you can say whatever you want about the city, but that's just that love and that compassion and that strength. It's inherent in every single New Yorker.
I agree. Even though there's some times where you're like, this is New York, they don't give a shit.
But that's just our daily persona.
Yeah. That's a daily thing. But when something happens, they're very together.
Yeah. What's your favorite New York City lingo, Marion?
Gosh. I go back to the 80s. So, all that hip hop kind of language from the Bronx. And, when we used to say, oh, word, You know, like when you're agreeing with somebody, or is that, and you haven't heard about, maybe I'm teaching you something, I don't know, that period of time. But when you agree with someone and just say word, you know, and then you're in agreement with them. But I love that we use words from all different cultures here, and they kind of mixed into the fabric of our language. Somehow someone random will throw out an Italian word or Yiddish word or who knows what, but I think it's a lot of fun. And my son, he's 11, he keeps me fresh on what the things are now and what the kids are saying, because he says them, I'm like, what the hell's that mean? You know, and he'll teach me, so I could stay cool even now, you know.
Yeah.
Eden?
Not specific lingo, but I love the accent. Like when someone would say coffee or
Coffee,
you know, like I love that, you know. And I love like literally the different neighborhoods, like the different neighborhoods, and there's like different swag depending on like which neighborhood you're in. So I love that.
Clementine?
I don't really know about the lingo, but for me, it's more like I love the direction and the street and how we, you know, like the corner of this and that and like street and avenues. And that's something I kept moving here, and nobody says that around here. So they always look at me like kind of weird. And I feel like, you know, I'm from New York. You know, no. And so yeah, I like that's very special. Like even when I'm in Paris, like nobody talks like that, and I just keep that same thing in every city I go to. And that's something I love about New Yorkers. Like we just understand each other with the fewest words possible.
Glenda?
Yeah. I mean, there's a couple. The one that is literally just frontmost in my brain right now is the word dead ass.
What is that?
And which really, you know, for anybody that doesn't know, it just means like seriously, like for real. You know, like I'm not lying, you know, kind of thing. But there's so many, and I like the how do I say, like certain words that can have so many different meanings just depending on the context. And sometimes it's just kind of New Yorkers that understand which context, you know, how to use it in the proper context, you know. So I don't know. That's I don't know why that word is just like forefront of my mind. But you know, there are other, you know, lingo words that I wouldn't use it in polite conversation, but
Yeah.
just, you know, just with friends and family and things like that.
Yeah.
I feel like there are a lot of words, and I think Eden is right. It really depends on like which neighborhood you're in, who you're talking to. Because I'm from New York, but people will always like they always say like you don't sound like you're from New York, like you don't have a New York accent. And like when we were talking offline, I was mentioning to you guys like how on TikTok they talk about like the specific New York lingo, and I'm like, I've never, like on TikTok they'll say like, oh, it's brick outside. I've never in my life, I have never in my life heard that say it's brick outside. Never.
It's just freezing outside.
I've never heard, like TikTok educated me. But one thing that I feel like two things I feel like are so specific to people who are from New York is we will say stoop, like let me sit on your stoop. And we will say when we want when we're buying something, let me get a, or can I get a? So like it's not like, oh, may I have something? It's like, no, let me get a bacon, egg, and cheese, or let me.
Right.
I was about to say bacon, egg, and cheese is not 3 words; it's 1 word.
Yeah,
you gotta say it quickly.
But I didn't realize how iconic bacon, eggs, and cheeses were until TikTok, because when I was growing up, in French we call them like la camionnette, like that's how we grew up.
That's so nice.
For the little camionettes and get your little breakfast or whatever. But I didn't realize people around the States knew about the importance of the New York bacon, egg, and cheese. It's wild.
Yep. On the Kaiser roll.
Yeah. I didn't know this. But for me, it's like stoop. I've never heard a non-New Yorker say stoop. And I've never heard a non-New Yorker say, let me get a, or can I get a? And like that very quick, like it's almost like one word. Can I get a, let me get a?
Yeah.
But yeah, we've been talking for an hour, and I really, really loved hearing about everyone's perspective about New York. And I'm very pleasantly surprised that all of us have confirmed the wonderfulness and the beauty and the complexity of this city. And before we leave, can you guys give your top 2 tips for people who are moving to New York, like things that they should know, like if they should stay off Craigslist, if they should go on whatever website, what are your top 2 tips for moving to New York and being a New Yorker? I'll go first really quickly. So when I was in high school, I lived religiously by this book called The Cheap Bastard's Guide to New York.
It's 3 o'clock.
It is fantastic. It just gives you, I think right now they're on their 5th edition. Get that book because that book will tell you about the art openings going on, where you can get like free wine and cheese at different art openings, which are the best bookstores for the cheapest prices, what you can do for free or for really cheap. Number 1. Number 2, if you're into the arts, and I am, there are standing room tickets at Lincoln Center. So you can actually go to the opera and pay. I used to pay like $15 to pay for standing room tickets. And then everybody leaves after the first act. So you can actually go and sit down. Another tip is the ballet, the American Ballet. You can buy, if you're under 30, tickets for $30, but you have to prove that you're under 30. So those are 2 really cheap ways to consume the art that's going on in the city. And The Cheap Bastard's Guide, it's only like a $10, $15 book. It's an amazing read. Clementine?
I mean, quickly, I would just say make sure you have savings and then look up Eventbrite free events. There's always free shit to do everywhere.
Eden?
For me, is just be you. Like everybody's experience, even on this panel, is not the same. Like it doesn't matter what. Like just don't let it like beat you down. Like just keep at it, keep going. So that would be my main advice. Like just don't give up. That's the whole point. Like don't give up. New York will respect you once you're put down and you come back up. So don't give up.
True.
I agree. Marion?
I would say that we have a ferry boat system that's incredible called Fast Ferry, and you can hop from borough to borough on a ferry boat and get to see New York from the water. And I would recommend going to our beaches and our mountains. It's a beautiful state, and we have beautiful beaches here, and we have amazing skiing or hiking. Just an hour or 2 outside the city. So explore.
I agree. Glenda?
Learn the subway system. It will help you tremendously.
Yeah.
Okay. Learn the subway system. Learn the closest bus routes to wherever you're staying. That will help you also to get home. And much like Marion said, explore. Go to the museums. For certain museums, you don't have to pay to go. To go in, you can just give a donation. Please consider donating. You don't have to though. I know that the Bronx Zoo, I think on Wednesdays, it's like free to go. Like go to these places where you don't think to go. It doesn't have to be like tourist traps or tourist areas where you have to go, but just kind of go out a little out to the boroughs, and you'll find amazing things that that you're just gonna enjoy yourself, have a blast at.
On that note, the Met is donation based, meaning even though their suggested donation is $25, you don't need to pay that to get into the Met. I've seen people pay a penny to get into the Met, and don't feel bad about not donating. They get federal money.
Yeah.
So you could definitely go to the Met for like $1. Every time I go, I think I only pay like $5.
Yeah.
So I think we lost Clementine, but we've been here for over an hour. Thank you guys so much for participating. Thank you everybody for watching, both on Facebook and on HAPS. I really, really enjoyed this conversation, and I really enjoyed the whole Women's History Month profiling and having discussions with different women from all different parts of the world, from all different parts and walks of life. I hope that you have learned everything these 4 weeks that we've been having a conversation. And if there's anything that the guests want to say, any parting words? I
want to say thank you to you, Elektra, for being so creative in the way that you're living your life and running your law firm. I love that you add music and the arts and all these daily successes that you have for your clients. I mean, we've been taught as women not to brag too much about the work that we do, but brag. You're doing awesome work, and you're entitled to be proud of the work that you're doing, and I'm very proud of you.
Thank you so much, Marion. Thank you.
Thank you just for inviting us, and then just like similar to what Marion said, just kind of getting out of your just lawyer zone and including other people within your within your world, but also being so interested in joining others, just so that, you know, everybody learns a little bit from everything. And it's just, our education's a little bit more rounded.
Exactly.
I agree. My goal is to be a multidimensional person.
Yeah, same here. Thank you for the platform and keep up the good work.
Thank you so much. Thank you, everybody. Thank you all for watching.
Nice meeting you, Glenda, Marian, and
Meeting you.
Clementine.
You
Nice meeting you.
Ciao.
Bye,
Ciao.
ladies.
Bye, everyone.